Good afternoon, everybody. All right. So today we have a class. It's just a little news class. Um, well, yeah, it's something that's been in the news, and it's kind of interesting. So I thought we'd go over it. Um, so it's on how billionaires are tired of the earth. At least that's what the article I found is called. I prefer to call it. Well, back in the day there was the Muppet Show. And they used to say pigs in space. Now I'm not calling billionaires pigs, but billionaires in space because I don't know. I guess it's a new thing for billionaires is to go up into space. But this article kind of goes into maybe why people are going up into space so much. So yeah, let's read on and see what it is. So another day, another billionaire in space. Billionaires in space. Gotta be quiet now. At least that's what it feels like. On Saturday, we saw billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX craft splash down in the ocean. And then another billionaire was joined on the flight by 3 other civilians. Ahead of the trip, the estimated cost was a whopping $55 million per seat. So, yeah, if you look at that's 110 million for 2 people, so 220 million total. Just for that. I'm wondering who's controlling these things. I'm hoping that the billionaires aren't flying them themselves, but I digress. So in July, we saw 2 other billionaires head into the clouds on rockets of their own. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic flight was followed shortly by billionaire Jeff Bezos's on his Blue Origin spaceship. So funding today's space race between the extra wealthy appears to be a combination of ego and potential profits. So you wonder how could people profit from going into space? Which just means they're going to make money somehow by going into space. Well, let's see how it works. So it says Branson's Virgin Galactic has already sold roughly 600 tickets to people who are willing to pay the cost of a house to be passengers on future flights. I'm serious. The price tag per Virgin Galactic ticket is between $200,000 and $250,000, which is not much less than the median price of a home in the United States. So that's expensive. It kind of reminds me of like Jurassic Park in a way, but in space. Maybe they're trying to hunt down aliens, but I'm just being only rich people could actually go to Jurassic Park, if you remember the premise of that. I mean, that was the design, but this is actually happening, so yeah, it's weird. To be blunt, before COVID-19, perhaps these billionaires battling out over building future space colonies or naming rights of Mars would not have bothered me as much. Well, this is the writer of it. While Americans were suffering through a deadly pandemic with shortages of basic needs. So, while the pandemic was going on, and a lot of people lost their jobs, they lost their businesses, people didn't have food. I mean, a lot of people lost their homes. Billionaires, on the other hand, reportedly increased their fortunes by 54%, which is a lot of money. So, let's say it was $1 billion that somebody had. 54% would be roughly $500 million as an increase during the pandemic, which that money could be going to helping people with families that need to be fed, or it could go to people going to space. Let's see, which is more important. Bezos, per an analysis by the Program on Inequality at the Institute for Policy Studies, saw his wealth jump from 113 billion to 178 billion between March 2020 and March 2021. That's a lot of money. And worse, recent reporting by ProPublica found the wealthiest among us weren't paying close to their fair share in taxes. Bezos ProPublica paid a true tax rate of 0.98% between 2014 and 2018, while Musk paid only 3.27% in taxes in that same time frame. All of that truly makes this egotistical space race that much harder to cheer for. Yeah, well, you can afford good lawyers, good tax lawyers, I guess, when you have that much money. What a contrast to the original space race, which began in the 1950s, which pit the U.S. against its Cold War rival, the Soviet Union. So, we know a little bit about this, and then in 1957, the Soviets made history by launching the first satellite into space. How many of you know the name of it? Think. And it actually scared a lot of Americans that the Soviets actually were the first, then Soviets were the first ones to go to space. It was called Sputnik. They soon topped that in 1961 when Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first person to orbit the Earth. The United States answered by creating its own space program in 1958 when President Dwight Eisenhower established the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, otherwise known as NASA. Then on September 12, 1962, the race between the two Cold War warriors really took off as JFK gave his famous speech on America's goal to land astronauts on the moon by the end of the decade. Now that was an impressive thing to say the least. Say that we hadn't even got one person in space yet by what? They said that was 1962. We hadn't even gotten an American to orbit the Earth or make it into space, and saying by the end of the decade, we're going to have somebody walking on the moon. Kennedy told Americans that we chose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. So Kennedy vowed to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills as Americans embarked on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure that man has ever gone. 7 years later, that dream was realized when American astronaut Neil Armstrong made history as he stepped foot on the moon. It was a moment of great national pride. A lot of people remember that day. A lot of people were outside looking up at the moon thinking, there's somebody the size of me way up there on the moon. Our nation's commitment to space travel, though, went far beyond competing with a Cold War foe. In fact, it's benefited us all with breakthrough health and science discoveries. For example, the space shuttle missions resulted in developing better techniques to monitor the heart, as well as instruments to measure bone strength. So if you think about it, I mean, that's really impressive. So we go to space, but in order to make sure the astronauts were doing okay, they developed a lot of healthcare stuff just to measure their heart rate, their blood pressure, things like that, and how they were doing and how space would impact them. For example, the space shuttle missions resulted in, I already said that. And over the past 20 years, astronauts aboard the International Space Station, orbiting roughly 250 miles above our planet, have worked. So right now, there's people up there. Have worked for our I don't know, that part cut out. Thanks a lot. So, with all that going on, compare that to the current race to the moon that's playing out in federal court, pitting Bezos versus Elon Musk, the two richest people on the planet, are dueling over a NASA contract to return astronauts to the moon. Both of these wealthy titans wanted their respective, so they wanted the contract for the moon. But NASA went with Musk's SpaceX. They didn't sit well with Bezos, leading his company to file a federal lawsuit against Musk's company. So, yeah, they're a little upset with each other. Perhaps there will be some benefits from the billionaire space race that will trickle down to all of us. But the current Billionaire Boys Club battle just makes us more aware that the gap between the wealthy and the rest of us is getting as wide as distant beyond our planet and $1 billion spacecraft in flight. And that can't be good, according to this guy, can't be good for our society in the long run. Because that's where all our money's going, is so these guys can go to space. Billionaires in space. Anyway, maybe one day it will trickle down. Who knows? Or maybe one day we'll come up with a contract for aliens, so where we have technology that that will change the way the world works. But until then, it's just a bunch of rich guys flying around around the Earth. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Just a little bit on the difference between space races and what's going on currently when it comes to that. Alright, well, you all have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.